The battlefield was burning. Smoke rose like dark fingers in the sky, and the ground was full of bodies. Metal, flesh, and blood. Alien soldiers lay broken, their weapons scattered, their eyes wide with fear. The enemy still marched forward, strong and merciless, their war machines glowing red like demons from another world. The alien defenders had almost given up. Their queen's army was weak, their spirits crushed. No one believed they could survive. Soldiers whispered, "It is over. We cannot win." But then, he came. Out of the dust and fire, a human walked forward. His armor was cracked, his face stained with blood and ash. His eyes burned like fire, not with fear but with rage. The alien soldiers turned and stared. None of them expected help. None of them thought a human could fight in this war. Yet here he was. He held only a blade in his hand, simple and sharp. Around him, enemy war beasts roared, their claws heavy like steel. The alien soldiers trembled, but the human did not move back. He stepped forward. The first beast attacked. It was twice his size, its jaws wide, its teeth shining. The human ducked low and with one strike cut across its neck. The beast screamed and fell, shaking the ground. The alien soldiers gasped. Another beast leapt at him. The human rolled, his blade flashing again. Blood sprayed the air. The beast dropped, lifeless. The human rose to his feet, his chest rising with each breath, his eyes scanning the enemy lines. The enemies laughed at first, thinking him foolish. One man against an army. But then he charged. He ran like a storm, his blade cutting through armored soldiers, his fists striking with brutal power. Every swing was precise, every movement filled with anger and purpose. The ground turned red as bodies fell before him. The alien soldiers who watched began to shout. At first they shouted in shock. Then they shouted in hope. The human fights for us. The enemy forces hesitated. They had seen many warriors, but never like this. The human fought as if death did not exist. His body moved even when blood dripped from his wounds. His roar echoed louder than their machines. Minutes passed like hours. The battlefield changed. Where there had been despair, there was now fire. The alien soldiers picked up their weapons again. Inspired by the human, they fought harder, stronger. Together they pushed back. When the last enemy fell, silence covered the field. Smoke drifted. Bodies lay still. And in the middle of it all stood the human, covered in blood, his blade dripping, his breath heavy but steady. The alien soldiers gathered around him, their eyes wide with awe. One whispered, "Is he even mortal?" Another said, "He is not like us." But he saved us. Word spread fast, from soldier to soldier, from camp to camp. The human had done what no one else could. He had slain the enemies who were unstoppable. He had turned defeat into victory. Far away in her grand throne room, the alien queen heard the news. Her golden eyes narrowed. Her people spoke of a human warrior, a man who fought like a legend, a man who stood against armies alone. The queen rose from her throne, her long robes flowing across the floor. She lifted her hand, her voice cold but sharp. "Bring me the human." The words echoed through the hall. The generals looked at one another, unsure if she wished to reward him or destroy him. The queen did not explain. She only repeated more firmly, "Bring me the human." The soldiers on the battlefield did not know what would come next. The human stood in silence, looking at the horizon, where more smoke rose. He did not smile. He did not cheer. His eyes were dark, as if he knew the war was not finished. But deep inside, one thought echoed in every soldier's heart. The human had saved them today and tomorrow. He might save, or destroy, them all. The human stood on the smoking battlefield, silent among the wreckage. Alien soldiers gathered around him, their armor cracked, their bodies wounded, yet their eyes shone with awe. They whispered his name, though he had never told them. To them, he was simply the human. He did not speak. His blade hung loosely at his side, dripping with the blood of enemies and beasts alike. His breathing was heavy, but his eyes cold, unshaken, looked far into the horizon as if he expected another enemy to rise from the ashes. Then the sound came, the metallic hiss of carriers descending from the sky. Tall machines landed on the ground, their engines shaking the earth. From their open doors marched the Queen's guards, soldiers clad in black and silver, their spears glowing with strange blue fire. They moved with perfect discipline, their helmets hiding their faces. The alien soldiers around the human stepped back in fear. They bowed their heads low. For everyone knew what this meant. The Queen herself had sent her chosen guards. The leader of the guard, a towering alien with armor sharper than blades, stepped forward. His voice echoed through a device on his mask. The Queen commands. The human is to be brought before her. The soldiers gasped. They looked at one another nervously. Some whispered, she will kill him. Others whispered, no, she will reward him. But no one truly knew. The Queen's mind was like the stars, bright but impossible to reach. The human, however, did not resist. He wiped the blood from his blade, sheathed it, and stepped forward. His eyes locked on the guards, calm and steady. He had fought beasts. He had fought armies. Whatever waited inside the Queen's palace, he would face it the same way. The guards surrounded him, not with fear, but with tension. They had seen warriors before. They had captured rebels, assassins, criminals. But never had they walked beside a man who had slaughtered enemies like a storm. The human said nothing as they marched him into the carrier. The Queen's throne room was vast and endless. Walls of black stone reached high into the air, decorated with glowing patterns that seemed alive. The floor reflected like glass, and soldiers lined the sides, unmoving like statues of war. At the end of the hall stood the throne. Upon it sat the alien Queen. Her presence was overwhelming. Her skin shone like silver in the light. Her crown of crystal spread like wings around her head. Her golden eyes were sharp, piercing, and filled with something dangerous. She leaned forward slightly as the guards pushed the human to the center of the hall. The silence was heavy. Every soldier held their breath. The Queen raised one hand, delicate but powerful, and her voice spread through the room like thunder. You are the one they speak of, the human who slew my enemies, her words echoed. The human did not bow. He stood tall, his eyes meeting hers. A ripple of shock spread through the hall. No one looked directly at the Queen. No one dared. Yet this human did. The Queen's lips curved, just slightly, into something that was not a smile, but not anger either. Tell me, she said softly, but her voice carried across the hall. Why do you fight for my people? You are not one of us. Your blood is different. Your flesh is fragile. Yet you cut down beasts and soldiers as if you were born to this war. The human's answer was simple. His voice was rough, deep, scarred by smoke and battle. Your enemies, he said, are mine too. The Queen's eyes narrowed. The hall grew colder. The generals and soldiers shifted uncomfortably, waiting for her reaction. She rose from her throne, her steps slow but powerful, her long robe sliding across the glass floor like flowing water. She circled the human, studying him. I have seen many warriors, she said. I have seen many killers. But you... Her golden eyes locked on him. You are different. You fight not for glory, not for survival. You fight for something else. I do not know what it is yet. But I will find out. She stopped in front of him, her face close, her eyes searching deep into his. Perhaps, she whispered, you are more dangerous than my enemies. The soldiers around the hall stiffened. Her words carried weight. Some thought she meant to execute him. Others thought she meant to honor him. The human did not move, did not blink. His silence was louder than any words. The Queen slowly leaned back and turned to her throne. Until I decide what you are, she said coldly, you will stay in my palace. You are not free, but you are not a prisoner either. You are something else. Her guard stepped forward. The human still did not resist. He allowed himself to be taken, his face unreadable. As he was led away, the Queen sat back upon her throne. But her eyes did not leave him. They followed him until the doors closed, and for the first time in many years, the Queen felt something she had long forgotten. Not fear. Not anger, but curiosity. The palace walls rose high above the city, sharp and dark against the sky. Inside, the human was kept under guard. He was not chained, yet he was not free. Soldiers watched him with wary eyes as if he were a beast in disguise. Days passed, but the Queen did not summon him again. Instead, she watched from afar. She ordered her spies to follow his steps to see if he spoke, if he showed weakness, if he revealed purpose. But the human was silent. He trained in the courtyard with whatever weapons they gave him, his movements sharp, his strength relentless. The alien soldiers whispered about him. Some feared him. Others admired him. Many asked the same question, why does he fight for us? But the Queen had another question, what is he hiding? One evening, when the moons glowed pale over the palace, the Queen called her council. Generals, advisors, and priests gathered in the grand chamber. The queen sat upon her throne, her golden eyes burning with thought. "This human is no ordinary warrior," she said. "He fights as if guided by rage, not by loyalty. I will not trust him until I know what lies inside his heart." A general stepped forward, his armor gleaming red. "My queen, allow me to test him. If he fails, we end his life. If he survives, we will know his worth." The queen's lips curved slightly. "Yes, the pits will decide." The council stirred uneasily. The pits were not for soldiers. They were for monsters, assassins, and traitors. A place where death was entertainment. No one who entered the pits was expected to leave alive. But the queen raised her hand and her voice was final. "The human will face the pits." The next day, the guards came for him. The human did not resist. He followed them through narrow halls until they reached a gate of iron. Beyond it, the sound of roaring filled the air. The gate opened, and he stepped inside. The pits were vast, a circle of stone and sand. Thousands of aliens filled the stands, shouting, screaming, hungry for blood. The air stank of sweat and smoke. The human stood in the center alone as the crowd chanted for his death. High above, the queen watched from her throne, her eyes unblinking. The first challenger came, a beast with 6 legs, its body armored, its jaws dripping acid. It rushed forward with a scream. The human waited, his stance low, his hand steady on the short blade they had given him. The beast leapt. The human rolled under its body, slicing as he moved. The blade cut deep into its soft underbelly. The beast shrieked and collapsed, its blood burning holes into the sand. The crowd roared, but the second challenger was already stepping forward. A massive warrior clad in spiked armor, holding an axe the size of a man. His eyes glowed with fury. He swung. The ground cracked beneath the force. The human dodged, quick as lightning. Blow after blow shook the pit, but the human's movements were sharp, calculated. Then in a flash, he closed the distance and drove his blade into the warrior's throat. The alien collapsed with a crash. The crowd screamed louder. One by one, more challengers came. Assassins with poisoned blades, beasts with armored hides, creatures born only to kill. But the human met them all. He fought not with elegance, but with raw survival. His body bled, his skin tore, yet his eyes never wavered. Each enemy fell, one after another, until the sand of the pit was soaked in blood. The crowd, once hungry for his death, now shouted his name, but then silence. From the shadows at the far end of the pit, a new figure emerged. Slim, cloaked, silent, the crowd fell quiet as if even they were afraid. The figure moved gracefully like smoke, a pair of curved blades glowing in their hands. The queen's eyes narrowed. This was not part of the plan. The assassin circled the human slowly. No beast, no warrior. This was different. This was precision. This was death sent with purpose. The assassin struck without sound, blades flashing. The human barely blocked in time. Sparks flew. The fight was fast, faster than anything before. The assassin moved like a shadow, each strike meant to kill. The human staggered, blood dripping from his side. The assassin leaned close during the clash, their voice a whisper only he could hear. "The queen must die." The words froze his mind for a split second, but instinct took over. He shoved the assassin back, their blades cutting across his arm. The fight raged on, brutal, silent, deadly. High above, the queen watched. She could not hear the words. She only saw the human fight with new fire, as if something had changed. Finally, the human caught the assassin's wrist mid-strike. With a roar, he twisted and drove his blade deep into the assassin's chest. The cloaked figure fell, lifeless, their glowing blades clattering against the stone. The pit fell silent again. The human stood in the center, wounded, bloodied, but alive. His chest heaved. His eyes lifted to meet the queen's. The queen's golden eyes narrowed, studying him. She did not smile. She did not speak. But in her heart suspicion grew, for she had seen many battles. She had seen many warriors, but she had never seen a man fight as if death whispered secrets in his ear. The pits had fallen silent. The crowd had screamed the human's name, but their voices faded quickly. What remained was only the echo of steel and the memory of the cloaked assassin's whisper. "The queen must die." Those words haunted him. He did not know who the assassin served. He did not know if it was truth or trick. But he knew one thing. Someone wanted the queen dead, and they had chosen the pit to make their move. In the throne room, the queen sat with her generals. Her golden eyes did not leave the human as he was brought before her once again. Her voice was calm yet sharp like glass. "You have survived the pits. No one expected you to, and yet here you stand." The general shifted uncomfortably. One of them, his face lined with scars, spoke harshly. "He is dangerous, my queen. He should be killed before he becomes more." But another bowed low. "No, Majesty. He could be the weapon we need. Our armies whisper his name already. He inspires where fear has silenced." The queen raised her hand and both fell silent. She rose from her throne and walked toward the human. Her eyes studied him like fire searching for cracks in stone. "Tell me, human," she said softly. "What did the assassin whisper to you?" The hall froze. The general stared, the guards gripped their weapons. The human's jaw tightened. His silence stretched long, then finally his rough voice broke it. "Nothing that changes my blade." The queen's eyes narrowed. She did not believe him fully, but she smiled faintly, just enough to show teeth. "Then let us see if your blade protects me as well as it slays my enemies." Days later, the queen announced a grand ceremony, a night of victory for her people. The enemies defeated in the field would be honored and their deaths celebrated. The palace filled with music, light, and soldiers in glittering armor. But beneath the celebration, the human felt unease. His instinct screamed that the assassin's words were not a lie. Somewhere in the shadows, blades waited for the queen. He moved through the hall quietly, his eyes scanning every corner, every guard, every shadow. The queen stood upon her throne, radiant in her crown of crystal and robes of silver. She lifted her hand and her voice filled the hall. "Tonight we honor survival. Tonight we honor victory. And tonight," she paused, her golden eyes falling upon the human, "we honor the one who brought us hope when none remained." The hall erupted with cheers, but the human's eyes caught movement, a glimmer, a shift in shadow, the whisper of steel. Time slowed. From the high beams above, a figure dropped silently, blade flashing for the queen's heart. The human roared. He surged forward, faster than thought, his body colliding with the queen's just as the assassin's blade struck. Steel screeched against his armor. Pain seared across his shoulder, but he did not stop. He slammed the queen to the ground, his own body covering hers. The hall erupted in chaos. Guards rushed, soldiers drew weapons, screams filled the air. The assassin leapt again, but this time the human was ready. His blade tore free from his sheath, flashing under the golden light. The clash was brutal, sparks flying as steel met steel. The assassin was fast, faster than most eyes could follow. But the human fought with raw fury, his strength breaking through speed. They battled across the hall, knocking over tables, shattering glass, driving the crowd into panic. The queen, rising from the ground, watched with sharp eyes. Her guards rushed to protect her, but she raised her hand. "No, let him fight." The duel raged on. The assassin struck with deadly precision, every blow aimed for the heart, the throat, the spine. The human's body bled from a dozen cuts, but his grip never faltered. His strikes were not perfect, but they were relentless, crushing, unyielding. Finally, with a roar that shook the chamber, he drove his blade deep into the assassin's chest. The figure gasped, choking on breath before collapsing lifeless to the floor. Silence followed. The human stood over the body, blood dripping from his wounds, his chest rising and falling like a storm at rest. He turned slowly, his eyes meeting the queen's. For the first time, the hall saw something impossible. The alien queen, proud, untouchable, feared by all, was alive because a human had thrown himself between her and death. The queen rose, her crown gleaming, her gaze locked on him. She stepped forward, her soldiers parting in silence. She stopped before him, close enough to see the blood that ran down his arm, close enough to see the fire in his eyes. "You could have let me die," she said softly, her voice for him alone. "You could have ended your chains, your tests, your trials, yet you chose to save me." The human's voice was low, almost a growl. Death was meant for the battlefield, not the throne. The queen's eyes searched his as if trying to pierce the wall of silence he carried. Then slowly, she nodded. "Very well, human. You will not be treated as a prisoner. From this day you stand in my council. But remember this," her voice sharpened, cold as steel. "If you betray me, I will be the one to end you." The hall bowed low. The queen turned back to her throne. But as she sat, her golden eyes burned with something dangerous, something she had not felt in years, not fear. Not anger, but trust, mixed with curiosity. The palace had changed. Where once the human was watched like a prisoner, now he walked with freedom. Guards still followed, but their eyes no longer burned with suspicion. Instead, they looked at him with respect, and sometimes with fear. Word of the assassination attempt had spread across the empire. Every soldier whispered the same truth. The queen lived only because of the human. The queen herself made it clear. At dawn, she announced before her court, "From this day the human stands among my council. He is no slave, no prisoner, but an ally of the throne." The hall had fallen into silence. Generals shifted in unease, priests bowed with stiff necks, and the people cheered beyond the walls. The queen's word was final, but while the court bent their knees, their hearts carried doubt. The council chamber was a place of strategy. Maps covered the tables showing enemy fleets, broken outposts, and dying colonies. The generals argued, their voices sharp and proud, but their plans were heavy with fear. The queen sat at the head, her golden eyes watching quietly as her empire trembled under the shadow of a ruthless enemy. And there, standing beside her, was the human. At first, the generals ignored him. To them, he was still an outsider, a creature of flesh and bone too weak for the vastness of war. But when the queen turned and asked, "Human, what do you see?" the chamber grew still. He looked at the maps with calm eyes. His voice was simple, but every word struck deep. "You fight where they are strong," he said. "You bleed yourself thin across too many fronts. Do not strike their armies. Strike their heart. Make them chase you. Make them fear you," the generals scoffed. "Impossible. We are already too weak." But the queen raised her hand, silencing them. Her gaze did not leave the human. "And how would you do this?" The human leaned forward, pointing to the map. "Here, their supply lines, their food, their fuel. Cut this and their army will starve. Then strike when they are hungry, not when they are strong." The room fell quiet. The plan was brutal, dangerous, but brilliant. At last the queen smiled faintly. "Then we shall strike where they least expect. Prepare the fleets." The weeks that followed changed everything. The human joined raids against the enemy empire, leading small groups into impossible missions. He fought not as a commander behind walls, but at the front, his blade and his voice driving soldiers forward. He fought like one who had nothing to lose and everything to prove. Victory followed. For the first time in years, the enemy was pushed back. Their fleets burned, their soldiers fled, their lines of supply shattered. The alien soldiers began to chant his name before battle. They painted his image on their armor. To them, he was no longer just a human. He was the warrior who brought fire back into their hearts. The queen watched all of it. Her people cheered, her armies sang, and her empire breathed again, but in her heart shadows grew. One night, when the palace was quiet, the queen walked alone through her halls. She thought of the human, his silence, his fury, his strange way of fighting. He was no ordinary soldier. He was something else. She remembered how he had saved her from death, how he had stood in her council with no fear, how he had turned her hopeless armies into fire. And yet, her golden eyes narrowed. If one human could do this for her people, what could he do against them? The next day, she summoned him to her private chamber. The walls shimmered with starlight, glowing softly. The queen stood by the window looking out at the vast city below. When the human entered, she did not turn. "My people chant your name," she said slowly. "They say you are the savior of our empire. They look at you as if you are one of us." The human remained silent. His eyes studied her, steady and unreadable. Finally, she turned. Her golden gaze locked onto his. "Tell me, human, why do you fight? Not just for survival, not just for war. What drives you?" The human's jaw tightened. His answer was quiet, almost too quiet to hear. "I fight because I cannot stop." The queen frowned. "You mean vengeance? Rage for your own kind?" The human's silence was his answer. For a moment, the queen felt something she did not like, something close to fear. She stepped closer, her voice cold. "Know this. You may fight for me today. You may save my people. But if ever your blade turns against me, human," her eyes burned like fire, "I will be the one who ends you." The human did not flinch. He did not bow. He simply turned and walked away, leaving the queen staring at the door with a storm behind her eyes. And so the bond was forged, not of trust alone, not of friendship, but of something far more dangerous. The queen trusted the human, but she also feared him. And in the shadows of the empire, The enemy had already learned of the human warrior who led their foes to victory. Their eyes turned to him now, their plans sharpened. The galaxy would not stay silent for long. The sky was burning. Flames lit the horizon as the enemy fleet descended upon the Queen's world. Warships blotted out the stars, their shadows stretching across cities and mountains. Their engines roared like thunder, shaking the very bones of the planet. The Queen's people looked upward in terror. They had tasted victory in recent weeks, but now the enemy had come in force, greater and stronger than ever before. The palace shook as the first bombardment struck the outer defenses. Towers crumbled, soldiers screamed, and the air filled with smoke. The empire trembled under the weight of war. In the council chamber, chaos erupted. Generals shouted, priests prayed, commanders argued. Some called for retreat, others for surrender. The enemy's power was overwhelming, but the Queen sat silent upon her throne, her golden eyes cold. Her gaze turned not to her generals, but to the human who stood among them, arms crossed, face like stone. At last she spoke. "Human, what will you do?" The room fell silent. Every eye turned to him. The human stepped forward, his voice steady, sharp like steel. "We do not run, we strike, not at their armies, at their heart. Their flagship controls them all. Break it and their fleet will fall into chaos." The generals erupted. "Madness. That ship is a fortress. 100 armies could not breach it." But the Queen raised her hand, silencing them. Her eyes burned as she studied the human. "You mean to say you would lead this strike yourself?" The human nodded. "I will take a team. We board their flagship, destroy its core, and end this war before it ends us." The Queen's lips tightened. She had trusted him in many battles, but this was beyond trust, it was death. Yet in her heart she knew there was no other choice. Finally she stood, her voice strong. "Then go, human. Take my finest soldiers. If this is to be our end, let it be written in fire." The battle raged in the skies above. Enemy ships poured fire into the Queen's fleet, tearing them apart. But through the chaos, one small strike vessel shot forward, weaving between the blasts. Inside, the human stood at the front, gripping his blade, his eyes locked on the colossal flagship ahead. It was massive, larger than mountains, its black hull glowing with red light. It pulsed like a living beast, surrounded by fleets of smaller ships. "Hold steady," the human growled. The pilot swerved, dodging enemy fire. The soldiers inside clutched their weapons, fear heavy in their eyes. But when they looked at the human, that fear turned into something else, hope. The ship slammed into the flagship's side, cutting through its hull. The soldiers rushed out, weapons firing, their war cries echoing through metal halls. The human led from the front. His blade tore through armored guards, his fists broke steel, his rage unstoppable. Every step forward was bought with blood. The enemy's fortress screamed with alarms, but the human did not slow. They pushed deeper into the ship, toward the core. The walls glowed red, heat rising, engines thundering. Enemy soldiers poured from every door, but the human cut them down with savage precision. His team followed, their courage burning brighter with every strike. At last they reached the heart of the beast, a vast chamber stretched before them, filled with glowing machinery, humming with power. In the center pulsed the core, a sphere of fire bound by chains of metal, the heart of the flagship. But standing before it was the enemy commander, tall, armored in black, eyes burning like coals. His voice shook the chamber. "So this is the human who dares defy us." The commander raised his massive blade. "I will end you myself." The clash was brutal. Steel met steel, sparks flying. The commander's strength was immense, his strikes shaking the floor. But the human's fury was unmatched. He fought with every wound, every scar, every ounce of will left in his body. Around them, soldiers fought and died, the chamber filling with screams and fire. But the human did not break. At last, with a roar, he drove his blade into the commander's chest. The alien staggered, gasping, before collapsing at the foot of the core. The human stood over him, blood dripping, chest heaving. Then he turned to the core. The Queen's soldiers shouted, "We must retreat. It will explode." But the human did not move back. His eyes locked on the burning heart of the ship. "Go," he growled. "Get out now." The soldiers hesitated. One cried out, "What about you?" The human's voice was steady. "I finish this." They fled, dragging their wounded, racing through the halls as alarms screamed louder. The human stood alone before the core. He raised his blade and with one final strike drove it deep into the sphere. The ship shook. Fire erupted. The walls cracked, flames pouring through. The core screamed like a dying beast as it collapsed inward. The human roared into the fire as the flagship exploded around him. Above the Queen's world, the enemy fleet faltered. Without their flagship's command, their ships spun out of formation, colliding, scattering. The Queen's forces surged, striking hard, tearing them apart. The skies lit with victory, but as the flagship fell in flames, silence gripped the Queen's throne room. She stood at her window watching the explosion in the sky. Her golden eyes narrowed, her chest tight. The human was gone, or so they believed. The sky was silent. Where the enemy flagship once loomed, there was now only fire and broken metal drifting through the stars. The Queen's fleet circled, cautious at first, then triumphant. The enemy ships, leaderless, lost, turned to chaos. Some fled, some collided, some exploded under the Queen's counterattack. The invasion had ended. Her people cheered, voices rising across cities and warships. The galaxy had witnessed the impossible. The enemy crushed, their strongest fortress destroyed. And the tale already spread like wildfire. The human did it. The human ended the war. But in the Queen's palace, joy carried a shadow. The throne room was filled with victory chants, but the Queen's eyes were fixed on the heavens. Her golden gaze searched the burning wreckage of the flagship, hoping, praying that somewhere in the flames the human lived. Yet no signal came. Her generals bowed, celebrating their triumph. Priests spoke of prophecy. Soldiers raised their banners. But none dared speak the thought that lay heavy in every heart. The human had not returned. The Queen sat on her throne, her face cold, hiding the weight in her chest. For she knew the truth of warriors. Victory often demanded sacrifice, and if the human had given his life for her empire, then his name would live forever. Days passed. The empire rebuilt. Cities repaired their walls. Soldiers carried their dead, and people sang songs of survival. In every song, one figure stood at the center, the human warrior who had fought like a storm. Children drew his image on stone walls. Soldiers carved his likeness into their armor. Merchants told tales of his strength, adding fire to every story. He had become more than flesh. He had become legend. The Queen listened to these voices in silence. She did not stop them. She did not correct them. But inside she wondered, was he truly gone? Or had fate taken him beyond her reach? Then one night, as the moons hung high, a soldier rushed into the throne room. His armor was broken, his voice shaking. "My queen," he gasped. "A survivor has returned from the wreckage." The hall froze. The Queen stood, her eyes sharp. "Where?" Moments later, the doors opened again. 2 guards entered, carrying between them a figure cloaked in ash and blood. His steps were weak, but his eyes burned the same fire they had always held. The hall gasped. The generals dropped to their knees. The soldiers shouted his name. The human had returned. He was broken, scarred, his body carrying wounds that should have killed 10 men. Yet he stood tall, his blade still at his side. He walked into the throne room as if nothing had changed, as if death itself had failed to claim him. The Queen descended from her throne, her robes flowing like silver flame. She stopped before him, her golden eyes locking onto his. For a long moment there was silence. Then slowly she spoke. "You destroyed their fleet. You saved my empire, and yet you live." The human's voice was low, rough, but steady. "I live because I must." The hall erupted with cheers. Soldiers pounded their chests. Priests raised their hands to the heavens. Voices rose until the stone walls shook. The Queen raised her hand for silence. She looked at her people, then back at the human. "Hear me," she declared, her voice echoing through the chamber. "From this day forward, our survival is owed to him. Our freedom, our breath, our very lives are because of the human. He is no outsider. He is no stranger. He is the warrior who stands where no one else could. Remember his name for as long as our stars burn." The hall thundered with chants. "Human! Human! Human!" The human stood silent, his eyes scanning the crowd. He did not smile. He did not bow. His face remained carved from stone, but deep within, something flickered, something almost lost in the fire of battle. For the first time, he felt not alone. The Queen turned back to him, her voice lowering so only he could hear. "You have given me victory, human. But tell me this, what will you take for yourself?" The human's eyes met hers, unblinking. His answer was quiet but sharp. I take nothing. I only wait, the queen frowned. Wait for what? The human's gaze drifted upward toward the stars beyond the ceiling. His voice was heavy, filled with something darker than triumph. For the next war, because there is always another. The queen fell silent. Around them, the hall still chanted his name, still sang of his glory. But her golden eyes narrowed, studying the man who had become her empire's savior. He was not finished. He was not at peace. He was a blade still unsheathed, a fire that would not die. And as she watched him stand tall among her people, one truth burned in her heart. The galaxy had not yet seen the end of the human. It had only seen the beginning.